This is Radio Hereford FC, the home of the Bulls.
Hello and welcome along to the latest edition of the Bullscast. After several postponements and a managerial change, we're back to discuss a winning start for new Hereford boss Aaron Downs. We'll take a look at the standout performers from Tuesday night's victory over Darlington, Downs' career path to the hot seat at Edgar Street, and how the Bulls may line up under his leadership. I'm George Holloway, and as ever, I'm joined by Keith Hall. Keith, thanks for joining me. It was the beginning of a new era at Hereford this week as Aaron Downs took charge of his first Bulls game following Paul Caddis' sacking, and he couldn't have asked for a better start. A 1-0 win over Darlington at Six Ways, Hereford's first league victory since the 6th of December last year, and remarkably, their first home league win since the 20th of September.
Yeah, breath of fresh air, wasn't it, really? Yeah, I know he brought two players in he knew from Cheltenham to freshen things up in the middle of the park, both in the centre of midfield and a little bit further forward. And I thought it worked a treat because you got a lot more energy out of the team and the crowd responded. They could see that the determination was there, that perhaps everybody's slumped their shoulders in recent months, thinking it's bound to happen, we're not going to do anything, and all of a sudden there's that little spark of exuberance and energy.
Yeah, Harry Tustin and Freddie Wilcox, the two new signings on loan from Cheltenham, and as you say, Keith, they played a really key part in providing a little bit more energy and work rate to the Hereford side.
It did. I mean, Freddie Wilcox, to me, he seemed to sit just in front of both Keenan Quansah and Matt Preston. They seemed to sweep up behind him, but he gave them that little bit of a shield. I wouldn't really call it necessarily a third central defender. I think he sat just in front of that, and then you've even got Mafuta then a few yards further forward. So in that central area, where teams have been cutting Hereford open in recent weeks, there was that extra blockage in there and that extra tenacity, and it made so much difference. And in fact, Aaron Skinner and Lewis Hudson, I think, both had their best games for Hereford for a while as wing-backs bombing down the flanks, and obviously Hereford got that reward from Skinner right at the end.
Yeah, we'll come on to the slight tactical tweaks that Downs made. But on to the first half. And as you say there, Keith, you just mentioned the flanks, and both sides got some joy down them in the first half.
Yeah, Tom Tweedy for Darlington, and on the opposite flank, Tom Allen. I think they both tried to stretch Hereford. Given it's Six Ways, it is a wide pitch. Not some of those narrow games that you watch sometimes in the National League North. Where long throws are really then important and long diagonals, so you're able to play it on the deck. It was one of the better 4G surfaces. I still don't like the surface. It still does tend to bounce up, but it seemed to be true, and the players could then react to it either on the half volley or the volley when making clearances or getting shots on goal. So overall, I thought it was a decent game, scrappy in a way, but both defences I thought did really well.
And both sides probably created their best chances when they flashed the ball across the box. Jack Maskell nearly got onto a couple of those chances, and similarly for George Munday and Andy Williams.
Yeah, I was impressed with Maskell up front. He's one of those strikers that sort of never gives up. He may have his head down occasionally, bombing forward, not necessarily looking up to see what options he has. But he's aggressive and determined, and I mentioned in commentary, because we were on Day Zone as well as Radio Hereford FC, I mentioned that Steve Watson had a bit of a luxury because he could then bring Aidan Rutledge on, who didn't really make much of an impact, I didn't feel, when he did arrive on the pitch at Six Ways, but Maskell did well up front, so it was important that Hereford tried to keep him quiet. But there was one occasion when he stretched at the far post and didn't quite get there, as you say, the ball flashing towards the 6-yard box, and he just couldn't throw himself at the ball to put it in. But at the other end, Hereford were doing the same. Cormac Daly looks a real threat, continues to do so since his arrival from Forest. He gives you that enthusiasm as well. He's quite happy taking players on, So he's an excitable player. The supporters down that one side, the settled Dugworth side where all the Hereford supporters were, I think, they could see the intensity and the amount of passion and effort that he was putting into his game.
Yeah, just on Cormac Daly there, Keith, we mentioned him in commentary last night, and he caused Darlington all sorts of problems just picking up the pocket of spaces between the Darlington defence and the Darlington midfield.
Yeah, as I say, you give him the ball as much as possible. That would be one of my strongest team talks, really, because he's someone who is likely to unlock any opponent's defence because of his quick feet and his ability to twist and turn. And I think, he's going to be very important in the weeks, hopefully the months to come. It's not too long. Got to pack all these games in such a short space of time, but I'm sure he's going to be a real asset.
It was an entertaining game last night, very even for the majority of the match. And before Hereford's goal came, Keith, Cedric Main, who was kept pretty quiet all night, had a good chance inside the box.
Yeah, he's one of those players that does come alive, and it's those moments when he does, and that he's a real threat. And on that particular occasion, he tried to spin on the ball, took a little bit possibly too long, and got his shot away, but it went into the side netting. So he's a player that will probably score goals in clusters. You wouldn't sort of look at him and say he's 100% effort. He's not that sort of player. He will get his sort of frontline sprinting going and can cause teams problems as a result. But I didn't feel he was really on top of his game for Darlington last night.
Well, just as we thought the game was heading for a 0-0 draw in Aaron Downs' first game in charge, Aaron Skinner was brought down inside the box on 90 minutes. He stepped up and converted.
Yeah, he, as you said in commentary at the time, he created the penalty and then converted it, put it away to win the game. There was a lot of anxiety about, you'd expect it from the Hereford crowd who had been waiting for a home win, albeit at Six Ways, waiting for a home win for so long. The pressure on that spot kick. And yet he just stood there, waited for a moment, and then hit the ball confidently into the top of the net. So with the goalkeeper Rory Watson going to his left, the ball sailed into the top corner the opposite direction. So it was a really good credit to Skinner, who fought well all night actually, because first of all he had Tom Allen to try and deal with whenever Darlington broke down that side of the pitch. And then of course they changed it with Max Howells coming on, who was a much different sort of prospect, much more diminutive sort of player. And I thought Skinner grew into the game, and he was the one that made that darting run into the box to almost cause that tackle to come in. He created it himself. I wondered whether he'd shoot a split second earlier, but he just dragged it even further, and then the challenge came in to win the penalty.
Can Darlington fans and Steve Watson feel hard done by, or was there enough contact in there for you?
Well, I felt there was enough contact in there, but previous to that, Adam Reaney had come on for Hereford about 2 or 3 minutes before that. He went down in the area, and I just thought he made a real meal of that. And I wasn't surprised when the referee shook his head and said that is no penalty. But significantly, 30 seconds or so later, Adam Reaney was alongside the referee on the halfway line, and he seemed to be in some sort of discussion about it. I thought at the time, oh, goodness sake, let it go. But maybe that just influenced the referee a little bit. So when Skinner went down, he thought, well, I didn't give you the first one, I better give you the second one. I'm not sure if Charlie King, the referee, really did that, whether it was an influence from Rooney, but you never know. Some referees that can be influenced, and I'm sure Adam Rooney was vociferous in his claims for a penalty.
And you can see how much that meant to the players and the fans at full time.
Well, it was a real crescendo when that ball actually hit the back of the net. And there was a lot of noise. I know that people look at the gate and say, well, that's only 1,100. But the fact of the matter is Hereford supporters have got to do a 50-mile round trip for a home game at Six Ways. And I thought that was a decent gate given the circumstances. Very cold evening. It was just credit to them, A, for being there. And then giving them wholehearted support. I didn't hear any sort of voices of concern. It was all, let's get behind Aaron Downs and Harry Pell and the players now. It's up to you collectively. We've all got our part to play, as Aaron Downs has already said, the new manager. It might be a minor part here and there, But collectively, we've all got to try and support the lads as they try and get over the line over the next few months.
Briefly, from a Darlington perspective, a few Quakers fans online saying their side took too many speculative efforts from outside the box. Keith, do you think that's a fair criticism?
It is, but then the surface is such that it will bounce up. As I said, a half volley, sits up nicely for you, and you're almost encouraged to let go and fire away from 30 yards. But I don't think they tested Theo Richardson as a result of that. He could watch most of those sail harmlessly over the top of the crossbar or well wide. And, they probably would have been better to try and drill that ball, as you say, across the penalty box and see if Main or Maskell can get on the end of it or get a deflection. So it probably didn't really respond as well to Darlington. They didn't perform as well as they have been doing. But I credit to Hereford, that's only the second time this season that Darlington have failed to score in an away game. They lost the other one 1-0 to Buxton, now 1-0 to Hereford, but only Hereford and Buxton have shut them out on their travels. So normally they are a goal threat, but not last night.
A brief glimpse into what Hereford fans may be able to look forward to under Downs. And he was asked, the new Bulls boss, after the match by Carson Wishart about some of the decisions he made in terms of the personnel and the formation, talking about wanting to get a few more bodies in the centre of the park, which is why he went for the 3-5-2 or 5-3-2. Do you think that maybe helped to give Hereford a little bit more control in the match?
Well, again, we saw the ability and the speed of Keenan Quansah, so he can cover across. And if you've got the shield in Matt Preston ahead of him, taking normally the headers that come in, he's the dominant partner in the defence and he attacks the ball. And then you've got Wilcox coming in as that extra cover as well. That seemed to gel well, and that might be something that certainly in the short term Aaron Downs is likely to continue with, because it gives you that strength in the middle. Having said that, if there are a side that operates slightly differently with the twin pairing up front, they might have to rejig a little bit, go back to a flat back four when necessary. But as far as Hereford's response to having conceded 10 goals in 3 previous games, I thought that was a really good masterstroke to actually make sure that they're not going to give Darlington too many opportunities. They did have some, obviously, but it wasn't as open and extreme as it was up at Southport when Hereford was just cut open time after time.
Another feature we may see under Aaron Downs is the third man runs made by some of the midfielders in towards the box, and Harry Tustin almost grabbed a goal on his debut if it wasn't for a good Rory Watson save.
Yeah, I was impressed with him, very tenacious. We'd heard about that on social media before kick-off, that's the sort of player he is. And old-fashioned terms, he's one of those players that rats around in midfield, gets constant work going, trying to get tackles in, win the ball back. I expect he's going to be too expansive, but he's one of those players that you need in there to get those challenges in, put the opposition off to a degree, and if he does win it, somebody else can take the creative approach and get that ball forward. And I thought, again, for such a youngster, got, Tustin's 18, Wilcox 20, and he did make his first team debut for Cheltenham at the age of 17 against Charlton Athletic back in 2023. So there's a player there, and hopefully he can get some experience with Hereford over the coming weeks.
Hereford are now 8 points from safety, with as many as 7 games in hand on some of the teams around them. How do you see Hereford's fight for survival after Tuesday night, Keith?
Well, you mustn't get carried away. It's just one win, but it does give you a little bit of impetus, and I'm sure the players will be encouraged with that, they've finally got the monkey off the back, or whatever you want to call it. They have got that victory. It's going to be difficult because they've got to play, at Redditch and then back at Sixways, the next 2 scheduled home matches. So it's not going to be straightforward, but it just gives them that little belief that perhaps has been lacking. And it's almost as though threw the towel in up at Hague Avenue, but there was no, argument about the attitude, desire, determination, all those attributes that you're looking for when you're battling now to get out of the bottom four, and that's what it's all going to be about. I still think 50 points has to be a target, maybe get away with slightly less, but I'm not sure. And the only way of doing that is you start picking up 3 points here and there. And with so many games to play, if you can get that momentum going, maybe some more new faces coming in as well. I get the impression that Aaron Downs is going to bring players in that he knows from the past. So there's an instant rapport. He knows the ins and outs of an individual, and he probably persuade them to come in and be involved in his future development as a manager. And work that way, and if he can get those combinations right, get those players in that he wants to play, not necessarily week in, week out, but be a part of the squad, to give them enough drive there to get out of the position that Hereford are in.
And it's something he mentioned a couple of times in his interviews this week, Keith, Aaron Downs, about the board giving him backing to freshen up the squad. Yeah,
I think the money was there. We were impressed with what he brought in for the opener. We'll see what comes in future weeks, whether there's a forward or a striker going to come in to give Monday and Williams some options up front. And he just seemed to be able to get those signings in. He might have a little bit more in the way of contacts with players that he's coached or worked with or even played with in the past, to come and join Hereford and join, the Downs plan, as it were, to drive things forward. Because if he succeeds in with Hereford in the next couple of months, then I'm sure that talks will then continue for being given the manager's job, maybe 1-2 year contract.
And Downs will be able to lean on his experience at Torquay United a couple of years ago, when they themselves were in a difficult situation, fighting relegation and also a points deduction and a transfer embargo. He's had an interesting career, Aaron Downs, and a journey to Edgar Street. Of course, a Queensland native, came over to England and played for the likes of Chesterfield and Bristol Rovers in the Football League. And alongside former Hereford United midfielder Harry Powell, they'll bring a lot of experience and hopefully calm heads in what is a difficult situation.
Yeah, as you say, you put your finger on it there. He's done it before at Torquay, so he knows what is needed to get out of the position that the club find themselves. And bringing Harry Pell in, I think that was a good idea. Positive energy will come from Harry Pell. Very inexperienced coaching. He did his coaching badge as a player. But, that's going to be the way forward for Harry Pell because of his cruciate ligament injury. I don't think we're going to see him ever be able to pull on the shirt for Hereford again. But what he will do is get that positive attitude in the dressing room, I'm sure, because he's always been a very popular player. When he was at Hereford, 60 games back in 2011, 2013. People still remember him in that central midfield role. So he'll give, I'm sure, some tips to the young midfield players that are starting in their career. So all in all, I think that's a good positive move both for the fans and for Aaron Downs himself, because he needs that foil to bounce ideas and discuss things with. Yes, he's got Adam Rooney there as well, who knows the National League North inside out. So between the three of them, they should be able to hit the ground running.
Just 3 other games took place in the National League North on Tuesday night. Telford drew 2-2 at home to Chorley. It finished Southport 0, Buxton 0, while Hereford's relegation rivals and bottom side Leamington lost 2-0 at home to Spennymoor. That all means South Shield stay top of the table with 67 points from 30 games. Fylde are just 1 point further behind though on 66, while Merthyr and Radcliffe occupy 3rd and 4th respectively. At the other end of the table, Leamington remain bottom with 19 points. Hereford move on to 25 points after 26 games and are 8 points from safety, with Peterborough Sports in 20th, having played 32. Hereford are back in action this Saturday as they host Scarborough at the Valley Stadium in Redditch. And it's another playoff chasing side, Keith, who, like Darlington, need the points.
They do. They had a little bit of a blip over the sort of the Christmas period, but they responded and are back in sixth now on 49 points, looking good. They have played 32 games, though. That's 6 more than Hereford, and they're a bit stop-start away from home. I could easily see a draw in this one, because they've drawn the majority of games on the road, 6 in fact, Scarborough, but they can play an expansive style of football, and in Harry Green, the left winger, the number 10, he's buzzing around constantly, and he's going to be one to watch, I think, when they face Scarborough. And of course he was there when they did play on a plastic surface last year, so they know all about it, and they probably have got the ways and the ways of playing will suit that sort of surface, because they used to play on it week in, week out. But I think he could be one that's a real threat for Hereford come Saturday.
Yeah, just 2 wins in their last 5 matches for the Sea Dogs, although they did beat a struggling Curzon Ashton at home on Saturday. I say at home, at Bridlington, of course. It's a commendable job, Keith, that Jonathan Greening has done over the last few years. Of course, Scarborough, another fan-owned club like Hereford, with not the biggest budget in the National League North, yet most seasons they continue to flirt with the playoffs.
Yeah, again, he looks at those players in the North East that he can bring in. He's obviously got a good scouting system up there to bring players in with a wide range of ages, and he's got the ability to change things tactically. You can never be absolutely sure how Scarborough will set up, whether it's a 3-4-3 or a 4-4-2, whatever. Jonathan Greenley's got the ability to do that. They're on a 5-match unbeaten run. 3 of those, though, have been draws. They've not yet, of course, met Hereford. 3 attempts, all postponed up at Bridlington. So you haven't got any history this season to build on, to work on from when you've played them before. So it's going to be an interesting one. Hereford have had a decent record, albeit at Edgar Street, not at Redditch. In recent seasons, they've beaten Scarborough twice at Hereford recently. In fact, 3 times on the spin. In fact, Jaden White with a 1-0 victory back in December 24, a 3-1 success back in 2023. Babos, Cowley and Cisse, the scorers then. And you go back to Orrin Pendley and Miles Story in January 2023 when Hereford got a 2-0 win at Edgar Street. It's usually the flip side up at Flamingo Land when Hereford have ever gone up there. But at home, usually Hereford find something extra to beat the Sea Dogs. But we'll see what happens at Redditch. Going to be an interesting one there because their playing surface has improved. I never liked going to Redditch because the bounce there really was astonishing. Their old 3G surface, but I'm given to understand that was all ripped up during the summer, and they put a new surface down with an underlay in there, so there's a lot more give, and it's probably one of the best 4G surfaces now. That's what I'm being told. I'll wait and see, but that's something else that the players will react to. They train on it all every time when they do get an opportunity up at Solihull Moors training ground. And so they should know all about it at a good level, as we saw at Sixways. So it's not that too detrimental anymore. And if you can get it right, as hopefully Redditch have, it could make for a good game.
And aside from Harry Green, Keith, where else do you think threats from Scarborough will come from, and how can they cause Aaron Downs' side problems?
Well, I've got Alex Perver in central midfield, and he's very consistent in my view. So again, that's giving the likes of the new youngsters that have come in for Hereford, Wilcox and Tustin, some work to do in there, I'm sure. It's all a question of possession, because that's normally what Scarborough rely on, possession-based football. That's what they've done in the past, certainly up at the Flamingo Land. May have changed because of the heavy pitch up at Bridlington. But Luca Colville, right winger, he's been in and out of the side recently, didn't actually start the game against Curzon last time out when Scarborough won by a 1-0. But, there's a couple in there. Rio Allen, another winger that Skinner and Hudson will have to keep close an eye on. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the game, actually.
Hereford are then back in action at Sixways the following Tuesday against a Chester side, Keith, who have had a rather peculiar season. They seem to have been left in limbo a little bit, with Callum McIntyre deciding to leave, or the club, I should say, deciding not to renew his contract at the end of the season.
It's a very strange decision in many ways. You're not putting on a manager on gardening leave, but he's not going to be there next season. So it's smacks of a bit of a financial issue to me more than anything else. I remember even last year going up to Chester, the fans were not seemingly behind McIntyre in the seated area, certainly in front of me. There was a lot of gripes going on, and yet they were quite successful getting up there into the playoff positions. So I'm not sure. Is it expectation level? Yeah, I'm sure it is. Paul Caddis would say the same. I've got you very near the playoffs within a point, and then it's just not. It's unravelled this season. So I think that's probably a lot of that is fan expectation up at the Diva Stadium, but it's not worked out. But they've still got some very good players, Chester, and so another tough ask. But the way things are seemingly at the minute, Hereford going to play better against the teams towards the top 10 rather than the strugglers. The acid test will no doubt come on Saturday the 28th of February, Hereford away at Alfreton. That is when Aaron Downs will have to show what he's about. Can he adjust, giving the players a challenge, both in terms of getting out of the position they're in at the minute, and you're playing a team that are pushing for promotion when you're playing, it's a dogfight really, Hereford against Alfreton. It didn't happen against Southport, but we'll forget that and move on. The whole club's got to move on with a fresh impetus and an outlook that says, look, we're all in this, let's get going.
In terms of Chester there, Keith, and their struggles, just an interesting point to pick up on. Do you think they're maybe still having a hangover from the playoff defeat that they suffered at Scunthorpe in May?
Well, partially. Fans were on a downer. They thought they were going to do it, and then it's taken away from them. But it's a difficult one. You regroup and you try to go again, and maybe you don't quite get the bits of luck and the fractions that you need. And I think that's probably why Chester have not really cut through teams and gone on to get back into the playoff contention. But they got good players there. It's just probably getting the right mix.
So 2 tough games to come for Hereford. But if Aaron Downs were to win the next 2, Keith, could we have a Michael Carrick situation on our hands?
Who knows? I'm gonna be an old-fashioned bore here and just say, just take one game at a time, George.
Very wise of you, Keith.
This is Radio Hereford FC, the home of the Bulls.